"You're not welcome at our weekly dinner," Mom texted. That Friday, when they walked into Luigi's, the owner looked straight at me and said, "The usual table, boss?" Dad nearly choked on his wine. The text arrived on a Tuesday afternoon while I was reviewing quarterly reports at my desk. 3 years of weekly Friday dinners ended with a single message from my mother: "You're not welcome at our weekly dinner anymore. Your sister needs family support right now, and your presence creates tension." No phone call. No explanation beyond that cold statement. Just an abrupt dismissal after 32 years of being their daughter. I stared at those words until my screen went dark. The family dinners at Luigi's Italian Bistro had been sacred in our household since I graduated college. Every Friday at 7 o'clock, without fail, we gathered around the same corner table. My parents, my older sister Amanda, her husband Kevin, and me. For 3 years, I had rearranged business trips, turned down social invitations, and fought through winter storms to maintain that tradition. My phone buzzed again. This time it was Amanda. "Thanks for understanding. Kevin and I need Mom and Dad's full attention right now. Our marriage is going through a rough patch, and we can't have distractions." Distractions. That's what I had become to them. I should mention that I had always been the dependable one. While Amanda bounced between careers and dramatic relationships, I built a stable life. I worked as a senior financial analyst at Whitmore and Associates, saved diligently, and kept my personal life drama-free. My parents praised Amanda's free spirit while treating my accomplishments as expected obligations. When she needed money for her third failed business venture, they co-signed a loan. When I bought my first condo at 28 through my own savings, my father's only comment was, "Well, it's about time you invested in property." The exclusion stung deeper than I wanted to admit. That evening, I drove past Luigi's on my way home. The restaurant sat on a busy corner in downtown Portland, its warm lights spilling onto the sidewalk. I had probably eaten there 100 times over the years. Antonio Luigi, the owner, knew our family by name. He always saved us the corner table with a view of the fountain in the square. Something shifted inside me as I watched a young couple walk through those familiar doors. I wasn't angry exactly. Anger would have been cleaner, simpler. What I felt was a cold, clarifying determination. They wanted me gone from their Friday ritual? Fine. But I wasn't going to disappear quietly into the background of my own life. The next morning, I called Antonio directly. We had chatted many times over the years, and he had mentioned once that he was considering retirement. His children had moved to California and weren't interested in the restaurant business. The conversation lasted 2 hours. By the end of it, I had an appointment with my attorney to discuss the purchase of Luigi's Italian Bistro. My colleague Jessica thought I had lost my mind when I told her during lunch the following week. "You're buying a restaurant? You work in finance, not hospitality." "I'm investing in property," I corrected her. "The building alone is worth the asking price, and the business has been profitable for 30 years. Antonio's willing to stay on as head chef for the first year to ensure a smooth transition." The business analysis took 3 weeks. Antonio's books were meticulous. The restaurant had a loyal customer base, reasonable overhead, and the building itself sat on a piece of downtown real estate that had appreciated significantly. My parents had no idea I had been building an investment portfolio since my first job. While Amanda spent her 20s traveling Europe and finding herself, I had been finding financial independence. My attorney, Robert Harrison, was thorough. "The deal is solid," he confirmed after reviewing everything. "Antonio's price is fair, possibly even generous. He clearly wants to see the place go to someone who will maintain its reputation." I made the offer in early October. By November, I owned Luigi's Italian Bistro. Antonio insisted on introducing me to the entire staff personally. Maria, who had been the head waitress for 15 years, looked skeptical at first. "You're going to change everything, aren't you? New owner always means new rules." "The only thing I'm changing is the signature on the checks," I assured her. "Antonio built something special here. I'm not interested in fixing what isn't broken." That seemed to ease the tension. Over the next few weeks, I spent my evenings at the restaurant, learning the business from the inside. Antonio taught me his suppliers, his scheduling system, his approach to customer service. I learned which tables were most requested, which menu items had the highest margins, and which regular customers had special preferences. I also learned that my parents had been coming to Luigi's for over 20 years, long before the weekly family dinners started. They had celebrated their 30th wedding anniversary in the private dining room upstairs. My father proposed to my mother at table 7, the one by the window. This restaurant was woven into my family's history in ways I hadn't fully appreciated. The transition was scheduled for January 1st. Antonio would stay on through June to ensure continuity, then retire to Florida where his sister lived. We kept the announcement quiet. A small notice in the local business section, a brief mention on the restaurant's website. Nothing dramatic. My parents never read the business section. Amanda certainly didn't. Why would they? None of them knew I had been building the kind of financial foundation that made buying a restaurant possible. During those weeks leading up to the ownership transfer, I discovered details about Luigi's that even my family didn't know. Antonio showed me the reservation book from 1998, the year the restaurant opened. My parents' names appeared in the third week of operation. They had been early supporters, coming back repeatedly in those crucial first months when a new restaurant fights for survival. Your father told everyone at his office about this place, Antonio recalled one evening as we reviewed the wine inventory. Brought in corporate lunches, birthday parties, everything. Without people like him, I wouldn't have made it past the first year. The irony wasn't lost on me. My father had helped build Luigi's into what it became, never imagining his daughter would someday own it. I wondered if he'd be proud or horrified when he eventually found out. I spent hours studying the financial patterns of the restaurant. Friday nights generated 30% of the weekly revenue. The corner table where my family sat had hosted some of the restaurant's most lucrative customers over the years. Corporate executives who ordered expensive wines. Wealthy retirees who came weekly and tipped generously. My family, while regular, were actually modest spenders by comparison. Maria pulled me aside one afternoon in mid-December. "I need to tell you something about your family's usual table." My stomach tightened. "What about it?" Antonio always held it for them, even when we had requests from bigger parties willing to spend more. He valued loyalty over profit on that one. "Just thought you should know, in case you want to change the policy." I considered this carefully. The businesswoman in me recognized the lost revenue. But something else, something I couldn't quite name, made me hesitate. "Let's keep things as they are for now. I'll decide after the new year." The decision felt symbolic somehow. I was buying the restaurant, but I didn't want to immediately erase every trace of what it had been. Antonio had built relationships, not just a business. Those relationships were part of Luigi's value. Jessica invited me to her holiday party in mid-December. I almost declined, exhausted from working 2 full-time jobs, but she insisted. "You need to have a life outside of spreadsheets and sauce recipes." The party was at her apartment in the Pearl District, filled with people from our office and her wider social circle. I nursed a glass of wine and made small talk, feeling disconnected from the casual conversation around me. These people were discussing vacation plans and holiday shopping. I was mentally calculating food costs and staff schedules. A man named Thomas approached me near the bookshelf. He worked in commercial real estate and had heard through Jessica about my restaurant purchase. "That's a bold move," he said. "The restaurant failure rate in the first year is brutal." "I'm aware of the statistics," I replied. "But Luigi's isn't a startup. It has an established customer base and a proven track record. Still, you're taking on a lot of risk. Most people would invest in something safer." "Most people aren't trying to prove anything," I said, surprising myself with the honesty. Thomas raised his eyebrows. "Prove what?" "That I'm more than the boring, reliable one who never causes problems or needs attention." The wine had loosened my tongue. "My family thinks I'm predictable. They took me for granted. I want them to see that I'm capable of building something extraordinary." He smiled. "Sounds like you're buying more than a restaurant." "Maybe I am." I left the party early, driving past Luigi's on my way home. The restaurant glowed against the dark December night, its windows fogged with warmth. Couples walked past, pausing to read the menu posted by the door. This would be mine soon. The thought sent electricity through my exhaustion. My Aunt Lorraine called me a week before Christmas. She was my father's sister and had always been kind to me, though we didn't speak often. "I heard about the situation with your family," she said. "Your mother mentioned it when I asked why you wouldn't be at Christmas dinner." "They uninvited me from that too?" I felt the familiar sting of exclusion. "Not exactly. She said you probably wouldn't want to come since Amanda needs the family's support right now." I told her that was ridiculous. "Your family too." I appreciated the validation. "It's fine. I have plans anyway." I didn't, but I would make some. "I also heard a rumor that you're buying a restaurant. Is that true?" I hesitated. Lorraine was family, but she was also close to my parents. Anything I told her would likely get back to them. Then again, they'd find out soon enough anyway. It is true. The sale finalizes in January. She laughed with delight. Good for you. I always knew you had more ambition than your parents gave you credit for. What restaurant? Luigi's Italian Bistro. The line went silent for several seconds. The Luigi's? Where your family goes every Friday. The very same. Another pause. Oh, honey. That's either the most brilliant or most complicated thing you could have done. Both, probably. She promised to keep it quiet until after the sale, though I could hear the amusement in her voice. Lorraine understood family dynamics in a way my parents never seemed to. She had been the rebellious one in her generation, moving to California at 18 and building a successful career in tech. My father had always called her impulsive, but I'd seen her financial portfolio once. She was far from reckless. Christmas came and went quietly. I spent it alone, working on the business transition plan and eating takeout Chinese food. My phone stayed silent except for a generic group text from my mother wishing everyone happy holidays. Amanda posted photos of their family Christmas on social media, all of them gathered around my parents' tree, my absence conspicuous in its lack of acknowledgement. I didn't feel sorry for myself. I felt free. The day after Christmas, I met with the entire Luigi's staff for a formal introduction as the incoming owner. Antonio had gathered everyone in the private dining room upstairs, even the part-time servers and the dishwashers. I know change can be scary, I began, standing at the head of the long table. You've all built something special here with Antonio. I'm not interested in destroying that. I want to preserve what makes Luigi's unique while also looking for opportunities to grow. A young server named Hannah raised her hand. Are you going to change the menu? Not immediately. Antonio's recipes are the foundation of this restaurant. But I'm open to seasonal specials and trying new things if Carlos wants to experiment. Carlos nodded appreciatively. I've got some ideas I've been sitting on for years. Bring them to me, I said. We'll test them as specials before making any permanent menu changes. Maria asked about scheduling and benefits. I had prepared for this question. Everyone keeps their current schedule and pay rate. I'm also implementing a profit-sharing program. If the restaurant does well, everyone shares in that success. The mood in the room shifted. Profit-sharing wasn't common in restaurants, but I wanted people invested in Luigi's success beyond just their hourly wages. These people made the restaurant work. They deserve more than minimum wage and uncertainty. We spent 2 hours going over policies, answering questions, and discussing ideas for improvement. By the end, I felt cautiously optimistic. The staff wasn't just accepting me as the new owner. They were starting to believe I might actually make things better. New Year's Eve arrived with unprecedented snowfall. Portland rarely got heavy snow, but that year dumped 8 inches overnight. The city effectively shut down. Luigi's had reservations for their annual New Year's Eve dinner service, one of the most profitable nights of the year. Antonio called me at 6 in the morning. Half the staff can't make it in. The roads are impossible. We're going to have to cancel tonight. I was already awake, watching the snow accumulate outside my window. Don't cancel yet. Let me make some calls. I contacted every staff member personally. Those who lived close enough to walk, I offered hazard pay to come in early and help prep. For those who were willing to brave the roads, I arranged to pay for ride services. By 3 in the afternoon, we had enough people to open, though we'd be running on a skeleton crew. I arrived at the restaurant at 4, sliding twice on my way from the parking lot. Maria was already there, along with Carlos and 3 servers. This is insane, Maria said. Half our reservations have cancelled anyway. We should just close. The other half are still coming, I replied. They're counting on us. Besides, this is technically my first service as owner. I'm not starting by letting people down. We worked frantically to prepare for the evening service. I expedited orders in the kitchen alongside Carlos. Maria ran between the front of house and the back, doing 3 jobs simultaneously. The servers who had made it in hustled like I'd never seen. The customers who did come in were grateful and generous. They understood the effort it took to stay open in those conditions. Tips were extraordinary. The atmosphere in the restaurant felt almost festive, everyone bonding over the shared inconvenience of the snow. Around 9 o'clock, a party of 6 arrived, well-dressed and clearly wealthy. They hadn't reserved, but we had open tables due to cancellations. Maria seated them near the fireplace. I was in the kitchen when I heard raised voices. One of the men at the 6 top was berating Hannah, our youngest server. I walked out to find him standing, pointing at his plate. This is completely unacceptable. I ordered my steak medium rare, and this is barely cooked. The steak looked perfectly medium rare to me. Hannah's hands were shaking. She'd been working since 4 and was clearly exhausted. I'm the owner, I said, stepping up to the table. Is there a problem? The man turned his ire toward me. Yes, there's a problem. Your incompetent staff can't cook a simple steak, and this child you have serving us clearly has no training. Something in me snapped. This man had no idea what we'd overcome to even be open tonight. Sir, your steak is cooked exactly as you ordered. Our chef has 30 years of experience. If you're unhappy with the temperature, I'm happy to have him cook it more, but I won't have you speak to my staff that way. His face reddened. Do you know who I am? I don't, and I don't care. You can treat my employees with respect, or you can leave. Your choice. His companions looked embarrassed. His wife put a hand on his arm. Richard, please. Let's just enjoy dinner. He jerked his arm away. I'm leaving. And I'll make sure everyone knows about the terrible service at this place. That's your right, I said calmly. Your meal is complimentary. Happy New Year. They left in a huff. After they were gone, Hannah burst into tears. I'm so sorry. I tried to explain the steak was right, but he wouldn't listen. You did nothing wrong, I assured her. That man was looking for a free meal. We're not going to tolerate customers who abuse our staff. The rest of the evening went smoothly. When we finally closed at midnight, the staff cheered. We'd survived a near impossible service and come out stronger. I bought champagne for everyone, and we toasted the new year in the empty restaurant. Maria pulled me aside as we were cleaning up. Antonio never would have confronted a customer like that. He always said the customer was right, no matter what. I'm not Antonio, I replied. Our staff is our most valuable asset. I'm not going to sacrifice their dignity for anyone's business. She smiled. I think I'm going to like working for you. That night felt like a turning point. I had officially taken ownership at midnight, and I'd already established what kind of owner I would be. Not a pushover. Not someone who prioritized profit over people. Someone who built loyalty by showing it first. December arrived with early snow. I received no invitation to Thanksgiving, no acknowledgement of my birthday on the 8th. My mother's text messages had stopped completely. Amanda posted photos on social media of cozy family dinners at Luigi's, always at our old corner table, always with the caption family time or grateful for these people. I didn't comment. I didn't react. I simply continued learning every aspect of my new business. The staff began to warm up to me as they realized I was serious about respecting Antonio's legacy. Carlos, the sous chef, started sharing family recipes his grandmother had taught him. Maria invited me to her daughter's college graduation party. I was becoming part of the Luigi's family in a way that felt unexpectedly genuine. January 1st came with freezing rain. Antonio and I signed the final papers in Robert's office at 9 in the morning. By noon, I was officially the owner of Luigi's Italian Bistro. We celebrated with champagne in the empty restaurant, Antonio toasting to new beginnings. Your family still comes every Friday, he mentioned casually as we cleaned up. I didn't mention the sale to anyone. Thought you might want to handle that yourself. I appreciated his discretion. Let's keep it quiet for now. I don't want to disrupt the dinner service with personal drama. That first week of ownership passed in a blur of paperwork, vendor meetings, and staff schedules. I kept my day job at Whitmore and Associates, managing the restaurant in the evenings and on weekends. It was exhausting, but I had never felt more purposeful. The learning curve was steeper than I'd anticipated. One morning, the produce supplier showed up with an order that looked wrong. I called Carlos in a panic. We have 3 cases of eggplant. I don't remember ordering this much eggplant. He laughed. It's Thursday. We always get extra for the weekend specials. Antonio probably forgot to mention that pattern. There were dozens of these small details. The espresso machine required a specific cleaning ritual every morning. The hostess stand phone had a quirk where you had to press 9 before dialing out. Regular customer preferences that weren't written down anywhere but lived in Maria's memory. Mr. Patterson always requested extra bread, never wanted ice in his water, and tipped exactly 20% down to the penny. Mrs. Chen was allergic to garlic but too polite to mention it unless asked directly. The Fitzgerald family came every other Tuesday and always split 3 entrees among 4 people, which some servers found annoying, but they were unfailingly kind and tipped well. I created a database for this information, systematizing what had previously existed only in institutional memory. Maria thought it was overkill at first, but came around when a new server was able to impress the Pattersons on his first night by bringing extra bread without being asked. My boss at Whitmore and Associates noticed my divided attention during a meeting about a client's portfolio restructuring. "You're distracted," she said afterward, not unkindly. "Is everything all right?" I considered lying, then decided against it. Samantha had always been direct with me. She deserved the same honesty. "I bought a business. A restaurant. I'm trying to manage both, but it's getting difficult." She leaned back in her chair. "You're too valuable to lose, but I also understand ambition. How about we move you to part-time consulting? You work on specific projects as needed, maintain your benefits, but have more flexibility. It's a pay cut, but it sounds like you might need the time more than the money right now." The offer was generous and unexpected. "You'd do that? You've been with us for 8 years and never asked for special treatment. You've earned some accommodation. Besides, if the restaurant fails, you'll still have something to fall back on." I took the offer. Moving to part-time consulting cut my income by 40%, but it freed up the time I needed to truly focus on Luigi's. My savings would cover the gap while the restaurant found its footing under new ownership. The first crisis hit in the second week. Our refrigeration unit in the walk-in cooler started failing. Carlos discovered it when he arrived at 5 in the morning to start prep. "We're losing temperature. If this thing dies completely, we'll lose thousands in inventory." I called 3 repair companies before finding one that could come that day. The technician was a grizzled man in his 60s who took one look at the unit and shook his head. "This thing is ancient. I can patch it, but you're looking at replacement soon. That's going to run you $15,000 minimum." $15,000 I hadn't budgeted for. I authorized the temporary repair and immediately started researching commercial refrigeration units. The quotes I received ranged from $12,000 to $23,000, depending on size and features. Robert, my attorney, had warned me about unexpected capital expenditures. "Restaurants eat money," he'd said. "Always have a cushion." I had a cushion, but I didn't want to drain it in the first month. I called Lorraine, who had experience with business operations. "Can I run something by you?" She listened as I explained the situation. "Buy quality, but buy used if you can find it. Check restaurant supply auctions. Places that go out of business often have barely used equipment they're desperate to unload. You might find something for half the retail price." I spent 3 days haunting online auctions and liquidation sales. Finally found a 2-year-old unit from a restaurant in Seattle that had closed after only 18 months. The owner was asking $8,000, and it was exactly the size I needed. I drove up on Saturday, inspected it personally, and negotiated the price down to $7,000 including delivery. Carlos was impressed when the unit arrived and was installed. "You got this for $7,000? Antonio would have just paid whatever the first company quoted him. You've got a good head for business." The compliment meant more than he probably realized. I was finding my footing, learning to trust my instincts, discovering that I was actually good at this. But managing a restaurant also meant managing personalities. 2 of my servers, Hannah and a college student named Marcus, started dating. The relationship turned dramatic when Marcus cheated, and suddenly they were having whispered arguments in the break room between shifts. Maria came to me frustrated. "This is affecting service. Hannah's been crying in the bathroom. Marcus is sulking. I need you to do something." I called them both into my office separately. To Hannah, I said, "I'm sorry you're going through this. Heartbreak is awful. But when you're on the floor, I need you fully present. If you need a few days off to get your head straight, take them. No judgment." She wiped her eyes. "I need the money. I can't afford time off. I'll pay you for 3 shifts. Take the weekend. Come back Monday ready to work." To Marcus, I was less sympathetic. "Your personal life is your business, but you made the choice to date a coworker. Now you both need to be professional. If you can't do that, one of you needs to find another job. Your choice, which one?" He straightened up after that. The situation resolved itself when Marcus's girlfriend found out about Hannah and broke up with him publicly in the restaurant during his shift. He quit out of embarrassment. Hannah stayed and became one of my most reliable servers. I learned that owning a restaurant meant being part therapist, part accountant, part referee. Every day brought new challenges that had nothing to do with food or service and everything to do with the complicated dynamics of people working in close quarters under stress. Friday arrived cold and clear. I spent the afternoon at the office, leaving at 5 to head to the restaurant. Maria had texted me earlier, your family's reservation is confirmed for 7. You want me to say something? No, I texted back. Just treat them like any other customers. I'll be in the office if you need me. The restaurant office was a small room behind the kitchen with a one-way window overlooking the main dining area. Antonio had used it to observe service without being intrusive. From there, I could see the entire restaurant, including the corner table by the fountain. At 7 o'clock sharp, my parents walked through the door. My father wore his navy blazer, the one he always wore for Friday dinners. My mother had on her pearl earrings. Amanda and Kevin followed close behind, Amanda laughing at something Kevin said. Maria greeted them with her usual warmth. Good evening. So wonderful to see you all again. Right this way. They followed her to the corner table, settling into their familiar seats. My father ordered his usual scotch. My mother requested white wine. They opened their menus even though they always ordered the same things. Everything proceeded normally. Their appetizers arrived. They talked and laughed. Amanda showed my mother something on her phone. My father and Kevin discussed something that involved hand gestures, probably work or sports. What they didn't notice was how the staff occasionally glanced toward the office window. How Maria checked with me twice to ensure everything was meeting expectations. How Carlos personally prepared their entrees, knowing the owner was watching. They finished their meal around 8:30. My father requested the check as he always did, pulling out his credit card before it even arrived. Maria brought the bill folder to the table with her professional smile. This was the moment I had been waiting for. Not with vindictive pleasure, but with a strange sense of completion. They had excised me from their Friday ritual. Now they were about to discover that the ritual itself had changed ownership. My father opened the folder. I watched his expression shift from casual contentment to confusion. He said something to Maria, gesturing at the bill. She responded with words I couldn't hear but could imagine, "There's no mistake, sir." My mother leaned over to look. Amanda craned her neck from her side of the table. They were staring at the check, but that wasn't what had captured their attention. At the bottom of every bill, Luigi's included a small printed line, "Thank you for dining with us. Management." Starting January 1st, that line had been updated to include the owner's name. My father stood up abruptly. He walked toward the host stand where Maria had returned. I could see him talking urgently, his face flushed. Maria remained calm, nodding, then gesturing toward the office door. She knocked twice before opening it. "The Prescott party is asking to speak with the owner." "Send them back," I said quietly. Maria's expression was sympathetic but professional. She disappeared and returned moments later with my entire family trailing behind her. They crowded into the small office, my father in front, his face a mixture of shock and something else I couldn't quite identify. "What is this?" he demanded, waving the check. "Since when do you own Luigi's?" "Since January 1st, I replied calmly. Antonio decided to retire. I made him an offer. The sale went through 3 weeks ago." My mother's hand was pressed to her chest. "You bought this restaurant? How could you possibly afford this? I've been investing since I started working. Turns out living below your means and making smart financial decisions for a decade pays off." Amanda looked furious. "You did this because of the dinners. Because we asked you to give us space." "You didn't ask," I corrected. "You texted me that I wasn't welcome anymore. There's a difference. But no, I didn't buy this restaurant out of spite. I bought it because it's a sound investment and because Antonio wanted someone who understood what this place means." My father was staring at me as if seeing a stranger. "You should have told us you were considering something like this." "Why would I? We haven't spoken in 3 months. You made it clear that I was a distraction from Amanda's marital problems." I took that message to heart and focused on my own life. Kevin, who had been silent until now, spoke up. "This is insane. You can't just buy the family restaurant." "It wasn't the family restaurant," I said. "It was Antonio Luigi's restaurant. Now it's mine. You're welcome to continue dining here. The menu hasn't changed. The service hasn't changed. You just have a different person signing your checks." My mother's eyes were filling with tears. "Sweetheart, if you wanted to be included in the dinners again, you could have just said something." The endearment almost made me laugh. "I wanted to be included 3 months ago. You sent a text message ending a 3-year tradition because Amanda needed attention. I'm not angry about it anymore. I'm just done waiting for you to remember I exist unless it's convenient." The office fell silent except for the muffled sounds of the dinner service continuing outside. My family stood there, crowded into the small space, finally seeing me as something other than the reliable, forgettable daughter. "Are you going to ban us from coming here?" Amanda asked, her voice small. "Why would I do that? You're customers. Your money is as good as anyone else's. But you should know that every Friday night, I'll be here. This is my restaurant now. These are my staff, my responsibility, my investment. You can continue your family dinners, but I'm not going to pretend I don't exist just to make it comfortable for you." My father set the check down on my desk. "We need to talk about this as a family. We're not talking about anything tonight. You have a bill to pay. The restaurant closes at 10, and I have inventory to review." They filed out slowly, my mother glancing back twice as if expecting me to call them back. I didn't. Maria was waiting near the office door and smoothly guided them back to their table. My father paid the check. They left without the usual lingering at the door to chat with Antonio. The next morning, my phone exploded with messages. My mother called 4 times before I answered. "We'd like to take you to lunch," she said. "Please. We need to talk about what happened." I met them that Sunday at a cafe across town, neutral territory. My father looked like he hadn't slept well. Amanda was subdued, picking at her muffin without eating it. My mother started with an apology. "We handled everything wrong. When Amanda told us she and Kevin were having problems, we thought giving them our full attention would help. We didn't realize how much we were hurting you. You excluded me without explanation," I said. "You treated me like an inconvenience. And honestly, that wasn't new. That's been the pattern my entire life. Amanda gets support and attention. I get expectations and assumptions." My father flinched. "That's not fair. Isn't it? When Amanda needed money for her art gallery, you co-signed a $40,000 loan without hesitation. When I asked you to look at the business plan for a potential investment, you told me I was being too ambitious and should focus on my actual job. That business plan was for a restaurant, wasn't it?" My mother asked quietly. "Yes. This was 8 months ago. I wanted your input because I valued your opinion. You dismissed it completely." Amanda set down her coffee cup. "I've been selfish. Mom and Dad always helped me because I kept messing up. You never needed help because you had everything together. We took you for granted." It was the most self-aware thing I had heard my sister say in years. I didn't have everything together. I just didn't fall apart where you could see it. And eventually, I stopped trying to include you in my life because it hurt less than being ignored. The conversation lasted 2 hours. There were more apologies, some tears, and a fragile agreement to try rebuilding what had broken. But I made something clear before we left: Luigi's was mine, and the Friday dinners would never be what they were before. "If you want to keep coming on Fridays, you're welcome to," I told them. "But I own that space now. I worked for it, invested in it, and I'm proud of it. You'll see me there. You'll see me succeed there. If that makes you uncomfortable, pick a different restaurant." My father reached across the table and took my hand. "We're proud of you. I should have said that a long time ago." It was a start. Not forgiveness, exactly, but a beginning. The following Friday, they didn't show up at Luigi's. I felt a mix of relief and disappointment as 7 o'clock came and went with no Prescott family reservation. But around 8, my mother called. "We're trying a new place tonight," she said. "A little Thai restaurant near our house. Would you like to join us next week? Maybe we could start a new tradition. One that doesn't have so much history attached to it." "I'd like that," I said. They did eventually return to Luigi's, but not for a few months. When they came, it was different. My father shook hands with Carlos in the kitchen. My mother complimented Maria on her excellent service. Amanda asked questions about the business with genuine interest. The night that made everything worth it came in late spring. A Friday evening, busy dinner rush, every table full. Antonio was visiting from Florida and had stopped by to see how things were going. He was standing with me near the host stand when my family walked in. Maria greeted them warmly. "Good evening. Let me show you to your table." Before she could lead them away, Antonio called out, "One moment, Maria." He turned to me with a huge smile. "The Prescott family. You should show them to their table personally." My parents looked uncertain. Amanda smiled tentatively. I walked over to them, menus in hand. "Good evening," I said formally, professionally. "Welcome to Luigi's. Right this way." I led them not to the corner table by the fountain, but to a different spot. A round table near the kitchen window, where they could see the organized chaos of dinner service, where the energy of the restaurant flowed around them. "We usually sit over there," my father mentioned, gesturing to the corner. "That table's reserved tonight," I said. "But I think you'll enjoy this spot. You can watch Carlos work. He's an artist with pasta." As I handed them menus, my mother touched my arm. "Thank you for having us." "Thank you for coming," I replied. I walked back to the host stand where Antonio was grinning. "You've done well with this place," he said. "Better than I expected. You've made it yours without losing what made it special." That was the highest compliment I could have received. The restaurant thrived under my ownership. I eventually left my finance job to focus on Luigi's full-time, expanding the wine selection and introducing a Sunday brunch service that became incredibly popular. Maria was promoted to general manager. Carlos developed a signature dish that food critics praised. The restaurant that had witnessed my family's milestones became a milestone of its own in my life. My relationship with my parents and Amanda slowly rebuilt itself. Not into what it was before, but into something more honest. They learned to see me as someone beyond the reliable daughter. I learned to set boundaries without bitterness. We never went back to the weekly Friday dinners. Instead, we met monthly at various restaurants around the city, taking turns choosing the location. Sometimes they came to Luigi's, but it was never scheduled, never obligatory. When they did visit, they came as customers who respected the owner, not as family expecting special treatment. The text message that had ended our Friday tradition stayed in my phone. I never deleted it. Occasionally, when I was doing late-night paperwork in the restaurant office, I would reread it and feel grateful for the cold dismissal that had pushed me to build something entirely my own. The corner table by the fountain, the one my family had claimed for so many years, became the most requested table in the restaurant. Couples celebrated anniversaries there. Business deals were closed there. Marriage proposals happened there. I never held it for my family unless they specifically reserved it weeks in advance, like any other customer. One evening, almost a year after I took ownership, a young woman came in alone and asked if she could sit at that corner table. It was a slow Tuesday night, and the table was available. "Special occasion?" I asked as I showed her to the seat. "Sort of," she said. "I just accepted a job offer that's going to change my life. I wanted to celebrate somewhere beautiful, by myself, before everything gets chaotic." I brought her a complimentary glass of Prosecco. "To new beginnings," I said. She raised her glass to mine. "To building something that's entirely yours." I smiled. "I'll drink to that." As I walked away, I glanced back at her sitting alone at the corner table, looking out at the fountain in the square, savoring her moment of triumph. I saw myself in her. The woman who had been dismissed, who had been told she wasn't welcome, who had taken that rejection and built something beautiful from it. The restaurant hummed with conversation and laughter around us. My restaurant. My success. My terms. And every Friday night at 7 o'clock, when the dinner rush began and the corner table filled with new faces and new stories, I stood in my office watching it all and felt completely, thoroughly welcome in the space I had claimed as my own.